Okay, I'm sorry. There. Is that bad? That's better. No, I did not know. It's because I need to set up the um I need to set up the automatic scene switcher again, because then I don't have to worry about thinking about that. Glad I was talking. Well, no, you wouldn't even hear that because it wasn't. Oh. Apparently, I've been talking to myself this whole time, I'm guessing. And the stream thing is not coming through right. No, I'm sure I changed that. Let's see. Scroll. Yeah, scroll should say 7 to 6. Okay. Let's see. Ticker text. 7 to 8. It does say live stream 7 to 8. Oh, voice. Lovely. Thank you, honey, for letting me know. It's not a short stream. It is going to be a short stream. And technically, I suppose it didn't really stop. It just kind of never continued like it was supposed to. It's just one of those days, I think. Oh. Honey, what you doing? I'm in the middle of the street. No, it's streaming. It's yeah, but it technically it didn't stop. I didn't switch scenes, so I switched scenes, and it's still continue. It's still continuing now. I just the video link and it says video unavailable. It says I'm going for 5 minutes now. Okay. Okay, we'll try. Yeah, try again. You should get a tweet. Okay. 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 No, I'm on the stream. I saw your chat, and my intro went by, and the reason why I didn't switch is because I didn't switch scenes. I had it set up automatically before, so you'll be able to be heard on my. Because it's still saying that I'm streaming. Like, it says I've been streaming for 6 minutes now. So go have a look. You should have gotten a notification from YouTube too for my channel. I don't know. Can anybody hear me now that I'm not being a dumb person and the link from Twitter is not working. Of course the link from Twitter is not working. Why would the link from Twitter work? Okay. Okay, going from YouTube subscriptions, it works. Okay, so I want you to check this. Can you check this one for me, please? I guess it helps if I get your Twitter name right. Hey. So, can you try that one? Hi, honey. Can you try that one, please? I just mentioned you in a tweeter. Okay. And, Yeah, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if it's going on or not. The, what? You, YouTube? What the heck, YouTube? Live stream. You don't have enough video. I don't care. Mm. Okay, watch. Where's the watching thingy? Change view on watch page. There it is. Okay. Oh. Okay. Now I'm viewing it on watch page. Share. Uh, 7 to 8. Okay. This one is. I closed out YouTube and Twitter and reopened everything and redid the link and it worked. Okay, good, cause. Okay, I'm glad it worked, cause it's yeah. Okay. Okay, see you there. Okay, I guess that got sorted out eventually. uh, what a, what a, mm, what a what? I know, honey. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I really do. You like my snowing? You like my snowing? Snowing over me. Oh, get some more. Hmm. Let's see here. Oops. There we go. I know, brr. it's uh, it's cold out today. Actually, it's not really. It's actually really well. It's not. Relatively speaking, I suppose it's nice. It's not bad out. It's the let's get the heating pad going. Um, it's a balmy whatever degrees outside, and it's there. It's Nadine, spit it out. Oh my gosh, it's nice out. Well, it's freezing rain, and then it's supposed to rain all night, so it's not too bad out. And why is that? I changed it, didn't I? Holy cow! Why isn't it changing? Let's see. Live streams book club. Um, 7 to 8. Save it. And I think that changed it. Yay! Yay, yay. Okay, that worked. I am having one of those days, I think. And let's get this changed too. 7 to 8. 7 to 8. East of the sun and west of the moon. No, 7 to 8, not 1 to finish. 7 to 8. And there we go. There we go. So yay. Okay, now we're good. Now we're good. So you like the snowy? Had to fix a few things first, but you know. Can you hear me okay? Am I sounding all right? I don't know. Well, we'll see. Okay. Oh, the show. Let's start the show. Section 7 of forgot to mute myself. Sorry. Okay, just having some minor technical difficulties here. I've got to just change the speakers to the speakers and change that and mute myself again.
Section 7 of East of the Sun and West of the Moon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. East of the Sun and West of the Moon by Christen ASBJØRNSEN Jørgen Engebretsen MOE. Translated by George Webb Descent. Section 7. The Three Princesses of Whiteland. Once on a time there was a fisherman who lived close by a palace, and fished for the king's table. One day when he was out fishing he just caught nothing. Do what he would, however he tried with bait and angle, there was never a sprat on his hook. But when the day was far spent, a head bobbed up out of the water and said, "If I may have what your wife bears under her girdle, you shall catch fish enough." So the man answered boldly, yes, for he did not know that his wife was going to have a child. After that, as was like enough, he caught plenty of fish of all kinds. But when he got home at night and told his story, how he had got all that fish, his wife fell a weeping and moaning, and was beside herself for the promise which her husband had made, for she said, "I bear a babe under my girdle." Well, the story soon spread and came up to the castle, and when the king heard the woman's grief and its cause, he sent down to say he would take care of the child, and see if he couldn't save it. So the months went on, and when her time came the fisher's wife had a boy. So the king took it at once, and brought it up as his own son, until the lad grew up. Then he begged leave one day to go out fishing with his father. He had such a mind to go, he said. At first the king wouldn't hear of it, but at last the lad had his way, and went. So he and his father were out the whole day, and all went right and well till they landed at night. Then the lad remembered he had left his handkerchief, and went to look for it, but as soon as ever he got into the boat, it began to move off with him at such speed that the water roared under the bow, and all the lad could do in rowing against it with the oars was no use. So he went and went the whole night, and at last he came to a white strand far, far away. There he went ashore, and when he had walked about a bit, an old man met him, with a long white beard. "What's the name of this land?" asked the lad. "Whiteland," said the man, who went on to ask the lad whence he came, and what he was going to do. So the lad told him all. "Aye, aye," said the man. "Now, when you have walked a little farther along the strand here, you'll come to three princesses, whom you will see standing in the earth up to their necks, with only their heads out. Then the first, she is the eldest, will call you and beg you so prettily to come and help her, and the second will do the same. To neither of these shall you go. Make haste past them, as if you neither saw nor heard anything. But the third you shall go to, and do what she asks. If you do this, you'll have good luck. That's all." When the lad came to the first princess, she called out to him and begged him so prettily to come to her. But he passed on as though he saw her not. In the same way he passed by the second, but to the third he went straight up. "If you do what I bid you," she said, "you may have which of us you please." Yes, he was willing enough. So she told him how 3 trolls had set them down in the earth there, but before they had lived up in the castle among the trees. "Now," she said, "you must go into that castle and let the trolls whip you each one night for each of us. If you can bear that, you'll set us free." Well, the lad said he was ready to try. "When you go in," the princess went on to say, "you'll see 2 lions standing at the gate, but if you'll only go right in the middle between them, they'll do you no harm. Then go straight on into a little dark room and make your bed. Then the troll will come to whip you. But if you take the flask which hangs on the wall and rub yourself with the ointment that is in it, wherever his lash falls, you'll be as sound as ever. Then grasp the sword that hangs by the side of the flask and strike the troll dead." Yes, he did as the princess told him. He passed in the midst between the lions, as if he hadn't seen them, and went straight into the little room, and there he lay down to sleep. The first night there came a troll with 3 heads and 3 rods, and whipped the lad soundly, but he stood it till the troll was done. Then he took the flask and rubbed himself, and grasped the sword, and slew the troll. So when he went out the next morning, the princesses stood out of the earth up to their waists. The next night 'twas the same story over again, only this time the troll had 6 heads and 6 rods, and he whipped him far worse than the first. But when he went out the next morning, the princesses stood out of the earth as far as the knee. The third night there came a troll that had 9 heads and 9 rods, and he whipped and flogged the lad so long that he fainted away. Then the troll took him up and dashed him against the wall, but the shock brought down the flask, which fell on the lad, burst and spilt the ointment all over him, and so he became as strong and sound as ever again. Then he wasn't slow, he grasped the sword and slew the troll. And next morning when he went out of the castle, the princesses stood before him with all their bodies out of the earth. So he took the youngest for his queen, and lived well and happily with her for some time. At last he began to long to go home for a little to see his parents. His queen did not like this, but at last his heart was so set on it, and he longed and longed so much, there was no holding him back. So she said, "One thing you must promise me, this, only to do what your father begs you to do, and not what your mother wishes." And that he promised. Then she gave him a ring, which was of that kind that anyone who wore it might wish 2 wishes. So he wished himself home, and when he got home his parents could not wonder enough what a grand man their son had become. Now when he had been at home some days, his mother wished him to go up to the palace and show the king what a fine fellow he had come to be. But his father said, "No, don't let him do that. If he does, we shan't have any more joy of him this time." But it was no good. The mother begged and prayed so long that at last he went. So when he got up to the palace, he was far braver, both in clothes and array, than the other king, who didn't quite like this, and at last he said, "All very fine, but here you can see my queen, what like she is, but I can't see yours, that I can't. Do you know, I scarce think she's so good-looking as mine." "Would to heaven," said the young king, "she were standing here, then you'd see what she was like." And that instant there she stood before them. But she was very woeful, and said to him, Why did you not mind what I told you, and why did you not listen to what your father said? Now I must away home, and as for you, you have had both your wishes." With that she knitted a ring among his hair with her name on it, and wished herself home, and was off. Then the young king was cut to the heart, and went day out day in, thinking and thinking how he should get back to his queen. "I'll just try," he thought, "if I can't learn where Whiteland lies." And so he went out into the world to ask. So when he had gone a good way, he came to a high hill, and there he met one who was lord over all the beasts of the wood, for they all came home to him when he blew his horn. So the king asked if he knew where Whiteland was. "No, I don't," he said, "but I'll ask my beasts." Then he blew his horn and called them, and asked if any of them knew where Whiteland lay. But there was no beast that knew. So the man gave him a pair of snowshoes. "When you get on these," he said, "you'll come to my brother, who lives hundreds of miles off. He is lord over all the birds of the air. Ask him. When you reach his house, just turn the shoes so that the toes point this way, and they'll come home of themselves." So when the king reached the house, he turned the shoes as the lord of the beasts had said, and away they went home of themselves. So he asked again after Whiteland, and the man called all the birds with a blast of his horn, and asked if any of them knew where Whiteland lay, but none of the birds knew. Now long, long after the rest of the birds came an old eagle, which had been away 10 round years, but he couldn't tell any more than the rest. "Well, well," said the man, "I'll lend you a pair of snowshoes, and when you get them on, they'll carry you to my brother who lives hundreds of miles off. He's lord of all the fish in the sea. You'd better ask him, but don't forget to turn the toes of the shoes this way." The king was full of thanks, got on the shoes, and when he came to the man who was lord over the fish of the sea, he turned the shoes round, and so off they went home like the other pair. After that, he asked again after Whiteland. So the man called the fish with a blast, but no fish could tell where it lay. At last came an old pike, which they had great work to call home, he was such a way off. So when they asked him, he said, "Know it? I should think I did. I've been cook there 10 years, and tomorrow I'm going there again, for now the Queen of Whiteland, whose king is away, is going to wed another husband." "Well," said the man, "as this is so, I'll give you a bit of advice. Hereabouts on a moor stand 3 brothers, and here they have stood these 100 years, fighting about a hat, a cloak, and a pair of boots. If anyone has these 3 things, he can make himself invisible, and wish himself anywhere he pleases. You can tell them you wish to try the things, and after that, you'll pass judgment between them, whose they shall be." "Yes." The king thanked the man, and went and did as he told him. "What's all this?" he said to the brothers. "Why do you stand here fighting for ever and a day? Just let me try these things, and I'll give judgment whose they shall be." They were very willing to do this, but as soon as he had got the hat, cloak, and boots, he said, "When we meet next time, I'll tell you my judgment." And with these words he wished himself away. So as he went along up in the air, he came up with the north wind. "Whither away?" roared the north wind. "To Whiteland," said the king, and then he told him all that had befallen him. "Ah," said the north wind, "you go faster than I, you do, for you can go straight while I have to puff and blow round every turn and corner. But when you get there, just place yourself on the stairs by the side of the door, and then I'll come storming in, as though I were going to blow down the whole castle. And then, when the prince, who is to have your queen, comes out to see what's the matter, just you take him by the collar and pitch him out the door. Then I'll look after him and see if I can't carry him off." Well, the king did as the north wind said. He took his stand on the stairs, and when the north wind came storming and roaring, and took hold of the castle wall so that it shook again, the prince came out to see what was the matter. But as soon as ever he came, the king caught him by the collar and pitched him out of doors, and then the north wind caught him up, and carried him off. So when there was an end of him, the king went into the castle, and at first his queen didn't know him, he was so wan and thin, through wandering so far and being so woeful. But when he showed her the ring, she was as glad could be, and so the rightful wedding was held, and the fame of it spread far and wide. End of Section 7. Recording by Rhonda Fetterman.
Section 8 of East of the Sun and West of the Moon. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Harris. East of the Sun and West of the Moon by Peder Christen ASBJØRNSEN and Jørgen Engebretsen MOE. Translated by George Weber Dasent. Section 8. Soria Moria Castle. Once on a time there was a poor couple who had a son whose name was Halvor. Ever since he was a little boy he would turn his hand to nothing, but just sat there and groped about in the ashes. His father and mother often put him out to learn this trade or that, but Halvor could stay nowhere, for when he had been there a day or two he ran away from his master and never stopped till he was sitting again in the ingle poking about in the cinders. Well, one day a skipper came and asked Halvor if he hadn't a mind to be with him and go to sea and see strange lands. Yes, Halvor would like that very much, so he wasn't long in getting himself ready. How long they sailed I'm sure I can't tell, but the end of it was they fell into a great storm, and when it was blown over and it got still again they couldn't tell where they were, for they'd been driven away to a strange coast which none of them knew anything about. Well, as there was just no wind at all, they stayed lying wind-bound there, and Halvor asked the skipper's leave to go on shore and look about him. He would sooner go, he said, than lie there and sleep. "Do you think now you're fit to show yourself before folks?" said the skipper. "Why, you've no clothes but those rags you stand in." But Halvor stuck to his own, and so at last he got leave, but he was to be sure and come back as soon as ever it began to blow. So off he went and found a lovely land. Wherever he came there were fine large flat cornfields and rich meat, but he couldn't catch a glimpse of a living soul. Well, it began to blow, but Halvor thought he hadn't seen enough yet, and he wanted to walk a little farther just to see if he couldn't meet any folk. So after a while he came to a broad high road, so smooth and even you might easily roll an egg along it. Halvor followed this, and when evening drew on he saw a great castle ever so far off, from which the sunbeams shone. So as he had now walked the whole day, and hadn't taken a bit to eat with him, he was as hungry as a hunter, but still the nearer he came to the castle the more afraid he got. In the castle kitchen a great fire was blazing, and Halvor went into it, but such a kitchen he had never seen in all his born days. It was so grand and fine. There were vessels of silver and vessels of gold, but still never a living soul. So when Halvor had stood there a while and no one came out, he went and opened a door, and there inside sat a princess, who span upon a spinning wheel.
"Nay, nay, now," she called out, "dare Christian folk come hither? But now you've best be off about your business if you don't want the Troll to gobble you up, for here lives a Troll with 3 heads." "All one to me," said the lad. "I'd be just as glad to hear he had 4 heads beside. I'd like to see what kind of a fellow he is. As for going, I won't go at all. I've done no harm, but meat you must get me, for I'm almost starved to death." When Halvor had eaten his fill, the princess told him to try if he could brandish the sword that hung against the wall. No, he couldn't brandish it. He couldn't even lift it up. "Oh," said the princess, "now you must go and take a pull of that flask that hangs by its side. That's what the Troll does every time he goes out to use the sword." So Halvor took a pull, and in the twinkling of an eye he could brandish the sword like nothing. And now he thought it high time the Troll came, and lo, just then up came the Troll, puffing and blowing. Halvor jumped behind the door. "Hutetu," said the Troll, as he put his head in at the door. "What a smell of Christian man's blood!" "Ay," said Halvor, "you'll soon know that to your cost," and with that he hewed off all the Trolls' heads. Now the Princess was so glad that she was free, she both danced and sang, but then all at once she called her sisters to mind, and so she said, "Would my sisters were free too!" "Where are they?" asked Halvor. Well, she told him all about it. One was taken away by a Troll to his castle, which lay 50 miles off, and the other by another Troll to his castle, which was 50 miles further still. "But now," she said, "you must first help me to get this ugly carcass out of the house." Yes, Halvor was so strong he swept everything away, and made it all clean and tidy in no time. So they had a good and happy time of it, and next morning he set off at peep of grey dawn. He could take no rest by the way, but ran and walked the whole day. When he first saw the castle he got a little afraid. It was far grander than the first, but here too there wasn't a living soul to be seen. So Halvor went into the kitchen, and didn't stop there either, but went straight further on into the house. "Nay, nay," called out the Princess, "dare Christian folk come hither? I don't know, I'm sure, how long it is since I came here, but in all that time I haven't seen a Christian man. 'Twere best you saw how to get away as fast as you came, for here lives a Troll who has 6 heads." "I shan't go," said Halvor, "if he has 6 heads besides." "He'll take you up and swallow you down alive," said the Princess. But it was no good. Halvor would not go. He wasn't at all afraid of the Troll, but meat and drink he must have, for he was half starved after his long journey. Well, he got as much of that as he wished, but then the Princess wanted him to be off again. "No," said Halvor, "I won't go. I've done no harm, and I've nothing to be afraid of." "He won't stay to ask that," said the Princess, "for he'll take you without law or leave; but as you won't go, just try if you can brandish that sword yonder, which the Troll wields in war." Halvor couldn't brandish it, and then the Princess said he must take a pull at the flask which hung by its side, and when he'd done that he could brandish it. Just then back came the Troll, and he was both stout and big, so that he had to go sideways to get through the door. When the Troll got his first head in, he called out, "Ho-to-to, what a smell of Christian man's blood!" But that very moment Halvor hewed off his first head, and so on all the rest as they popped in. The Princess was overjoyed, but just then she came to think of her sisters, and wished out loud that they were free. Halvor thought that might easily be done, and wanted to be off at once, but first he had to help the Princess to get the Troll's carcass out of the way, so he could only set out next morning. It was a long way to the castle, and he had to walk fast and run hard to reach it in time, but about nightfall he saw the castle, which was far finer and grander than either of the others. This time he wasn't the least afraid, but walked straight through the kitchen and into the castle, and there sat a Princess who was so pretty there was no end to her loveliness. She, too, like the others, told him that there hadn't been a Christian folk there ever since she came thither, and bade him go away again, else the Troll would swallow him alive. And do you know, she said, he has 9 heads. "Ay, ay," said Halvor, "if he had 9 other heads, and 9 other heads still, I won't go away." And so he stood fast before the stove. The Princess kept on begging him so prettily to go away, lest the Troll should gobble him up, but Halvor said, "Let him come as soon as he likes." So she gave him the Troll's sword, and bade him take a pull at the flask, that he might be able to brandish and wield it. Just then back came the Troll, puffing and blowing and tearing along. He was far bigger and stouter than the other two, and he too had to go on one side to get through the door. So when he got his first head in, he said, as the others had said, "Ho-to-to, what a smell of Christian man's blood!" Well, that very moment Halvor hewed off the first head, and then all the rest. But the last was the toughest of them all, and it was the hardest bit of work Halvor had to do to get it hewed off, although he knew very well he had the strength enough to do it. So all the princesses came together to that castle, which was called Soria Moria Castle, and they were glad and happy as they had never been in all their lives before, and they all were fond of Halvor, and Halvor of them, and he might choose the one he liked best for his bride, but the youngest was fondest of him of all the 3. But there after a while Halvor went about, and was so strange and dull and silent. Then the princesses asked him what he lacked, and if he didn't like to live with them any longer. "Oh, yes, he did, for they had enough and to spare, and he was well off in every way, but still, somehow or other, he did so long to go home, for his father and mother were alive, and them he had such a great wish to see. Well, they thought, that might be done easily enough. You shall go thither and come back hither safe and unscathed, if you'll only follow our advice," said the princesses. Yes, he'd be sure to mind all they said. So they dressed him up till he was as grand as a king's son, and then they set a ring on his finger, and that was such a ring he could wish himself thither and hither with it, but they told him to be sure and not take it off, and not to name their names, for there would be an end of all his bravery, and he'd never see them more. "If I only stood at home I'd be glad," said Halvor, and it was done as he had wished. Then stood Halvor at his father's cottage door before he knew the word about it. Now it was about dusk at even, and so, when they saw such a grand stately lord walk in, the old couple got so afraid they began to bow and scrape. Then Halvor asked if he couldn't stay there and have a lodging there that night. No, that he couldn't.
"We can't do it at all," they said,
"For we haven't this thing or that thing which such a lord as used to have. 'Twere best your lordship went up to the farm, no long way off, for you can see the chimneys, and there they have lots of everything." Halvor wouldn't hear of it. He wanted to stop, but the old couple stuck to their own, that he had better go to the farmer's, that there he would get both meat and drink. As for them, they hadn't even a chair to offer him to sit down on. "No," said Halvor, "I won't go up there till tomorrow early, but let me just stay here tonight. Worst come to the worst, I can sit in the chimney corner." Well, they couldn't say anything against that, so Halvor sat down by the ingle and began to poke about in the ashes, just as he used to do when he lay at home in the old days, and he stretched his lazy bones. Well, they chatted and talked about many things, and they told Halvor about this thing and that, and so he asked them if they'd never had any children. Yes, they had once a lad whose name was Halvor, but they didn't know whither he had wandered. They couldn't even tell whether he were dead or alive. "Couldn't it be me, now?" said Halvor. "Well, let me see, I could tell him well enough," said the old wife, and rose up. "Our Halvor was so lazy and dull he never did a thing, and besides, he was so ragged that one tatter took hold of the next tatter on him. No, there never was the making of such a fine fellow in him as you are, master." A little while after the old wife went to the hearth to poke up the fire, and when the blaze fell on Halvor's face, just as when he was at home of old poking about in the ashes, she knew him at once. "Ah, but it is you after all, Halvor!" she cried, and then there was such joy for the old couple there was no end to it.
and he was forced to tell how he had fared, and the old dame was so fond and proud of him.
Nothing would do but he must go up at once to the farmer's and show himself to the lassies, who'd always looked down on him. And off she went first, and Halvor followed after. So when she got up there, she told them all how Halvor had come home again, and now they should only just see how grand he was, for, said she, he looks like nothing but a king's son. "All very fine," said the lassies, and tossed up their heads. "We'll be bound he's just the same beggarly ragged boy he always was." Just then in walked Halvor, and then the lassies were all so taken aback they forgot their sarks in the ingle, where they were sitting darning their clothes, and ran out in their smocks. Well, when they were got back in again, they were so shamefaced they scarce dared look at Halvor, toward whom they had always been proud and haughty. "Ha, hi!" said Halvor, "you always thought yourselves so pretty and neat, no one could come near you. But now you should just see the eldest princess I have set free. Against her you look just like milkmaids, and the midmost is prettier still. Ah, but the youngest, who is my sweetheart, she's fairer than both sun and moon. Would to heaven they were only here," said Halvor, "then you'd see what you'd see." He had scarce uttered these words before there they stood, but then he felt so sorry, for now what they had said came into his mind. Up at the farm there was a great feast got ready for the princesses, and much was made of them, but they wouldn't stop there. "No, we want to go down to your father and mother," they said to Halvor, "and so we'll go out now and look about us." So he went down with them, and they came to a great lake just outside the farm. Close by the water was such a lovely green bank. Here the princesses said they would sit and rest a while. They thought it so sweet to sit down and look over the water. So they sat down there, and when they'd sat a while, the youngest Princess said, "I may as well comb your hair a little, Halvor." Well, Halvor laid his head on her lap, and she combed his bonny locks, and it wasn't long before Halvor fell fast asleep. Then the Princess took the ring from his finger and put another in its stead, and she said, "Now hold me all together, and now would we were all in Soria Moria Castle." So when Halvor woke up he could very well tell that he had lost the Princesses, and began to weep and wail, and he was so downcast they couldn't comfort him at all. In spite of all his father and mother said, he wouldn't stop there, but took farewell of them, and said he was safe not to see them again, for if he couldn't find the Princesses again he thought it not worth while to live. Well, he had still about 60 pounds left, so he put them into his pocket and set off on his way. So when he had walked a while he met a man with a tidy horse, and he wanted to buy it, and began to chaffer with the man. "Oi," said the man, "to tell the truth, I never thought of selling him, but if we could strike a bargain, perhaps—" "So what do you want for him?" asked Halvor. "I didn't give much for him, nor is he worth much. He's a brave horse to ride, but he can't draw at all. Still, he's strong enough to carry your knapsack, and you too, turn about," said the man. At last they agreed on a price, and Halvor laid the knapsack on him, and so he walked a bit and rode a bit, turn and turn about. At night he came to a green plain where stood a great tree, at the roots of which he sat down. There he let the horse loose, but he didn't lie down to sleep, but opened his knapsack and took a meal. At peep of day off he set again, for he could take no ill rest. So he rode and walked, and walked and rode, the whole day through the wide wood, where there were so many green spots and glades that shone so bright and lovely between the trees. He didn't know at all where he was or whither he was going, but he gave himself no more time to rest than when his horse cropped a bit of grass, and he took a snack out of his knapsack when they came to one of those green glades. So he went on walking and riding by turns, and as for the wood, there seemed to be no end to it. But at dusk the next day he saw a light gleaming away through the trees. "Would there were folk hereaway," thought Halvor,
that I might warm myself a bit, and get a morsel to keep body and soul together."
When he got up to it, he saw the light came from a wretched little hut, and through the window he saw an old couple inside. They were as grey-headed as a pair of doves, and the old wife had such a nose, why, it was so long she used it for a poker to stir the fire as she sat in the ingle. "Good evening," said Halvor. "Good evening," said the old wife. "But what errand can you have in coming hither?" she went on, "for no Christian folk have been here these 100 years and more." Well, Halvor told her all about himself, and how he wanted to get to Soria Moria Castle, and asked if she knew the way thither. "No," said the old wife, "that I don't. But see now, here comes the moon. I'll ask her, she'll know all about it, but doesn't she shine on everything?" So when the moon stood clear and bright over the tree tops, the old wife went out. Thou moon," she screamed, "canst thou tell me the way to Soria Moria Castle?" "No," said the moon, "that I can't, for the last time I shone there a cloud stood before me." "Wait a bit still," said the old wife to Halvor. "By and by comes the west wind. He's sure to know it, for he puffs and blows round every corner." "Nay, nay," said the old wife when she went out again, "you don't mean to say you've got a horse too? Just turn the poor beastie loose in our town, and don't let him stand there and starve to death at the door." "But won't you swap him away to me? We've got an old pair of boots here with which you can take 20 miles at each stride. Those you shall have for your horse, and so you'll get all the sooner to Soria Moria Castle." That Halvor was willing to do at once, and the old wife was so glad at having the horse, she was ready to dance and skip for joy. "For now," she said, "I shall be able to ride to church. I, too, think of that." As for Halvor, he had no rest, and wanted to be off at once, but the old wife said there was no hurry. "You lie down on the bench with you and sleep a bit, for we've no bed to offer you, and I'll watch and wake you when the west wind comes." So after a while up came the west wind, roaring and howling along till the walls creaked and groaned again. Out ran the old wife. Thou west wind, canst thou tell me the way to Soria Moria Castle? Here's one who wants to get thither." "Yes, I know it very well," said the West Wind, "and now I'm just off thither to dry clothes for the wedding that's to be. If he's swift of foot he can go along with me." Out ran Halvor. "You'll have to stretch your legs if you mean to keep up," said the West Wind. So off he set, over field and hedge, and hill and fell, and Halvor had hard work to keep up. "Well," said the West Wind, "now I've no time to stay with you any longer, for I've got to go away yonder and tear down a strip of spruce wood first, before I go to the bleaching ground to dry the clothes. But if you go alongside the hill you'll come to a lot of lassies standing washing clothes, and then you've not far to go to Soria Moria Castle." In a little while Halvor came upon the lassies who stood washing, and they asked if he'd seen anything of the West Wind, who was to come and dry the clothes for the wedding. "Ay, that I have," said Halvor. "He's only gone to tear down a strip of spruce wood. It'll not be long before he's here." And then he asked them the way to Soria Moria Castle. So they put him into the right way, and when he got to the castle it was full of folk and horses, so full it made one giddy to look at them. But Halvor was so ragged and torn from having followed the West Wind through bush and briar and bog that he kept on one side, and wouldn't show himself till the last day when the bridal feast was to be. So when all, as was then right and fitting, were to drink the bride and bridegroom's health and wish them luck, and when the cup-bearer was to drink them all again, both knights and squires, last of all he came in turn to Halvor. He drank their health, but let the ring which the princess had put upon his finger as he lay by the lake fall into the glass, and bade the cup-bearer go and greet the bride and hand her the glass. Then up rose the princess from the board at once. "Who is most worthy to have one of us?" she said. "He that has set us free, or he that here sits by me as bridegroom?" Well, they all said there could be but one voice, and will as to that. And when Halvor heard that he wasn't long in throwing off his beggar's rags and arraying himself as bridegroom. "Ay, here is the right one after all," said the youngest princess as soon as she saw him, and so she tossed the other one out the window and held her wedding with Halvor. End of Section 8, Soria Moria Castle. Recording by Mike Harris.
Well, that was interesting. Kind of strange. But hey, that's the way these stories are. Ends up being really strange. Excuse me. So that's it for tonight. I'm kind of tired, so I'm gonna let y'all go, and I'll see you Sunday for some more of East of the Sun and West of the Moon. Love you guys. Thanks for coming by. Bye.